Hey folks, and welcome to the video covering all the games I played from the 1st of December 2024 to the 1st of December 2025. The last month of the year often gets lost in the shuffle, and I needed some time to work on the video, so that's why there's an overlap. I played each game in this video for around an hour, wrote a script with my impressions of it, turned it into a video, arranged them in order of release date, and at the end, I've listed my top 10 games of the year before wrapping everything up. Feel free to use the chapters down in the description to jump around to hear my thoughts on games you're interested in, watch a few at a time, or binge the whole thing at once. Now, some of you may be asking, Dave, why only an hour? I used to make impressions videos where I would play a game for 10% of its completion time before writing a review. I found it a fun way to see how a game introduces itself to the player, and if what it had to offer enticed me to want to play more of it. After starting my NES videos and playing them for around 10 minutes each, I wondered what the smallest amount of time to get a good impression of a modern game was. When I started this project back in 2023, I played the games in that video for 30 minutes, but found that to be too short. So extended it to an hour for the 2024 video. I was happy with that time frame, so here we are. Finally, you may be noticing some heavy hitters of the year excluded from this video. I watched the trailers of most new games that release, and that tells me if it's something I want to try or not, as well as if it's available on a subscription service like PS Plus or Game Pass, or if it has a demo. A lot more games had demos this year, which I'm happy about. Some games aren't covered because they didn't interest me when I tried them, like Blueprints, but others aren't covered because I primarily play games on PC, and I refuse to support any game using Denuvo. That means I wasn't playing Civilization 6, Assassin's Creed Shadows, or Mafia: The Old Country, among others. Luckily, 2025 was a year of gaming riches. And as the 38 games I covered will show, there's more than enough to play that I had a good time with. So let's start the video off with a visually abstract, mechanically rich RPG roguelite called Caves of Qud. By the time my hour with Caves of Qud ended, I was completely on board. But it was a slow process. I still don't really know how to play the game, but discovering how this ASCII world works is part of the appeal. After the tutorial, my first character perished after getting lost on the way to the first quest location. I wandered the screens until I came across too many enemies to handle, and it was curtains for my first attempt. I then chose the tortoise preset. I made my way to the same location and got lost again, but this time I met a farmer who informed me of where I was on the map, and I was able to make my way there. What followed is what got me on board with the game. I entered the caverns below Red Rock and started exploring. I fought creatures, pilfered trash, and leveled up. I trudged through slime, which I think poisoned me when I tried drinking it. My movement controls were wonky, and my inventory was full of gibberish words. Luckily, it didn't last long. I found myself leaving trails of water, slime, and blood where I walked, while trying to get to grips with how the game controls and operates. I think the controls are the biggest barrier to entry. I used a combination of the mouse and keyboard shortcuts, but a wayward click could spell disaster. There are so many menus and abilities, systems upon systems. I think the simple art style is there to house this giant world and everything that can happen in it. It's one of those RPGs where, thanks to the lo-fi art style and opaque mechanics, how the world works and how the game works feel like the same question, if not paths that are running in parallel. If I didn't find the act of dungeoneering and exploration so enticing, the sheer magnitude of possibility which Caves of Qud represents would be enough to say it's not for me. In a way, The UI and control scheme seem as archaic as the art style, but it clicked with me. As it's also a roguelite, unless you pick a game type aside from the default, each death or failed run should teach a little more about how the game and world of CUD works, and how to thrive within it. It feels like that might take at least dozens of hours, but it also feels like the time spent would be rewarding. I briefly tried Fantasian on iPhone back in 2022. I remember liking it, but my previous years of reviewing iPhone games gives me a distaste for any release trying to replicate a traditional control scheme on a touchscreen. Years later, and it's been ported to PC and consoles with some small improvements, and the gall to charge a AAA price. But I picked it up on a sale, and so was looking to enjoy a new game combining the talents of Hironobu Sakaguchi and Nobuo Uematsu. Fantasian Neo Dimension feels like a classic JRPG from somewhere in between the SNES and PS1 eras. This feeling is evoked through the traditional turn-based combat and amnesiac protagonist, as well as exploring off the beaten path for chests, and even how the text boxes look. Heck, it's not that the voice acting is bad, but the vibe of the game made me want to restart to access the options menu, so I could turn the voices off and have the characters come alive solely in my head. We wake up as Leo in a robot factory. A hole in the sky has birthed mechanoids that are slowly taking over the globe. We were apparently there to destroy one of the factories. This isn't the only thing that reminded me of the start of Final Fantasy VII. The camera pans out to show the whole city before zooming in on the explosion, and the chords of the soundtrack evoke a familiar though distinct tone from the opening of that classic game. I do wonder if Fantasian is Sakaguchi playing his greatest hits. When flashbacks are triggered, they play out in prose like the stories of Lost Odyssey, which is a game I really need to get around to finishing one of these days. We meet a fortune teller who's been given his power by a god, and his daughter Kina wants to join us on our quest. She wields magic, which is useful because it can curve in battle. I guess I better explain the battle system. It's ordered turns, and the special moves revolve around dealing damage in lines to more than one enemy. Leo's slash attack is rigid, but then Kina's magic can curve up and down, hitting more enemies than a straight line ever could. There was a robot in the intro that specialized in barrier magic, and I like how level ups refill health and mana, as well as changing the damage ratio between our characters and the area's opponents. I don't think Fantasian Neo Dimension is anything special, but being a longtime fan of Sakaguchi's games, as well as JRPGs in general, I like the vibes, characters, and combat enough to want to play more. Sometimes that's all you need. In previous videos, I've mentioned how awesome some games would look if I had a PC capable of ray tracing. Well, I built a new PC this last year, so now I do. Seeing how light shines through windows and casts shadows in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is mesmerizing. I thought the facial animation and performances looked great in close-up, and after the first sequence, my opinion changed from Troy Baker doing an okay Harrison Ford impression to just hearing Indy speak. From an audio-visual standpoint, I have no complaints. It's a bold choice to start the game recreating the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark. We learn how to use the whip and how we have to interact with objects before further pressing buttons to move them out of the way. Later on in Rome, I had to do the same for levers. I understand requiring more interaction is supposed to be immersive, but I felt annoyed. Have it like other games, where one button press is more than enough. I liked exploring offshoots of the main path, even if there wasn't much reward for doing so. It was fun just to see how many ways there were to get around the space and incapacitate fascists. It's funny because once the game loaded into the Rome level, the first thing I saw was a subtitle of someone talking, and their descriptor said fascist. Well, this is 1930s Italy after all. I had friends play the game when it came out, and a common complaint among them was how easy it was to fool the guards. Now, I was playing on easy, but even I was shocked by how I could just break line of sight to reset their behavior, or circle them in a wide arc to completely fool their programming. It's also far too easy to knock everyone out, and I didn't find either the ghost approach of staying unseen or the soldier approach of fighting the guards compelling. Maybe playing on a harder difficulty gives these sections more weight and intrigue, but from my perspective, they were interruptions between the well-acted cutscenes and the spectacular lighting. It's great that we have another Indiana Jones game that feels like a solid entry in the Indiana Jones series, Fate of Atlantis being the other. But after playing through the Raiders of the Lost Ark intro and what came after, I felt like instead of playing through surface-level immersive sim gameplay, I'd rather experience such a tale on the silver screen. I think 2025 is when the idle genre finally opened itself up to me. Even if Digseum really isn't an idle game. I did take a break halfway through my hour and came back to greater riches, but where Digseum departs from a traditional idle game is that it keeps the player mechanically engaged as they're progressing through the ever-increasing numbers, however superfluous that interactivity may be. You're curating the best museum ever. You travel to dig sites and use your stamina to dig up relics. Each dig site only has so many relics, but each duplicate found will increase the stats of the relic and work towards leveling up the dig site itself. I got into a habit of using the quick reset to play 3 rounds of any dig site before checking the upgrade menu back at the museum. Digging up relics is about clicking on dirt until it breaks and seeing whether or not part of a relic exists underneath. It's like playing an archaeological game of Battleship. But while you can rack up money if you leave Digseum unattended, the prestige system that I enjoyed in the Norp Apologue shows itself here, resetting the museum with bonuses. Each dig site contains dream fragments, which can be used to further expand the upgrade tree and make each subsequent playthrough easier and faster. It doesn't take long for the numbers to get stupid, which is another joy I found playing these games. I like seeing the numbers go up. I like feeling like I'm making progress, and I like optimizing my play. Digseum scratches all these itches in such a naked manner that I'm surprised it's taken me so long to hop on board the idle train. Even if Digseum uses the word incremental in its description, which is just as apt to explain the joy I find in these games. I have a couple of friends who've beaten Digseum within a couple of hours, so that this incremental game is a short experience as well just makes it even more enticing to me. By the time you see this, I'm sure I spent the extra couple of hours needed to completely curate my digital museum of wonders. Last year, I started my journey into idle games with the Norp Apologue. I liked the idea that once a player hit certain milestones, they earned tokens to spend on upgrades that would reset the game with bonuses. It scratched an itch I've always had with certain games, the urge to restart once I know a bit more about how to play to do things right this time. Idle Colony is about throwing fruit into a giant wok. Seeds float down, They must be watered and the fruit collected. The money earned through collecting fruit, budding flowers, or whacking moles can be spent on helpers to collect the fruit, ways to improve the collection and growth of the fruit, and all manner of other sequential upgrades. The cost of each new item jumps in price, and the method I found enjoyable about this type of system is to find out which upgrades cost the least and to buy everything in order from cheapest to most expensive, hopefully creating a strong foundation to sequentially increment my progress as the money acquired soars ever higher. What throws a wrench into the works is the tier of fruit tree you can grow. Once fertilizer is unlocked, it can be added to a seed to improve the tier of fruit before it buds. Higher fruit tiers lead to more money, but also unlock solar coins which can be spent on special upgrades. The other coins acquired from achieving milestones can be used on the upgrade tree in the ritual that resets the game. These prestige rituals are the barometer of progression, with new unlocks after certain milestones. After a couple resets, I stopped caring about my fruit tiers or anything else for that matter. As this is an idle game, stepping away for a while will allow you to come back to a nest egg of money to spend on upgrades. What I find clever about Idle Colony is that it will occasionally rain, which will water any seeds, allowing new trees to sprout. Your input as a player is not needed. That's the ideal for this genre, it seems, to upgrade enough systems so the player doesn't need to do anything except spend money. I'm still amazed at how engaging I find how transparent these idle games are, simply making decisions to allow the numbers to go up, and then resetting things to improve the speed and ability of making the numbers go up, leading to even greater numbers and more points to spend on the ritual to further upgrade the process. The wrapper almost doesn't matter, but I think having funny little creatures working to throw ever-increasing amounts of fruit in a giant wok is entertaining enough a premise to justify my time with such a time waster. What interested me about Cyber Manhunt 2 is that you play as an AI, an older model who is being used as a personal assistant for a higher up at Titan, the world's leading AI technology firm. This is one of those games where you need to search through the internet using various hacking and database tools to find out personal information about people in order to get to the bottom of what you've been tasked to uncover. In the tutorial, it's to see whether or not a staff member has been leaking secrets to the competition. And in the first chapter, it's to investigate a disgruntled ex-employee who has entered the lobby of the company with a bomb strapped to him. One hopes that despite my slow human processing, in-game, the AI is making these searches and deductions in milliseconds. The way Cyber Manhunt 2 operates is that you drag information to the relevant fields, and anything worth uncovering is highlighted in red, adding to the database you're compiling on each person. The issue is that you have to be methodical. For instance, in the tutorial, I couldn't hack into my suspect's phone because I needed 2 pieces of behavioral information. Why? I couldn't tell you. It turns out that when browsing his toothbook, yes, this is one of those games that creates weird facsimiles of popular sites and apps, I had missed what felt like a throwaway sentence. In the first chapter, the same thing happened again, but this time I found out by looking at the clues page and reading what the one clue I was missing alluded to. It allowed me to search in the right location to find the information I was missing. But I like how things are already starting to get more complicated, like how I have to move past a firewall, typing short command lines in order to uncover a password, even though it's in an easy-to-interface with way. The game feels like it wants to keep progression rolling along smoothly with every piece of new information. And while you can just open up each app to only search for the red highlights, I found reading through the messages and getting a wider perspective on the people involved fascinating. The subject matter is already veering towards heavy, and it feels like ultimately this is a cautionary tale on how such technology can be misused and the dangers of our digital world. I definitely want to see this through to the end. I just hope I stop missing those red highlights that grind my investigation to a halt. Once Final Fantasy VII Rebirth got going in the Nibelheim Mountains, I was impressed by how smooth the experience became. I'd be running through pretty areas, smashing boxes for items, with a trek broken up by banter, cutscenes, and battles. There were ridiculous moments, like using an industrial Mako vacuum to trigger the elevator, but everything was flowing by at such a quick pace that I didn't have an opportunity to tire or get frustrated by any singular element. I was curious about the combat. I've played the original FF7, but I haven't played Remake. I had heard the combat is real-time, and that's sort of true. You can turn the battle into slow motion by opening a menu, and the ability to cast spells and unleash abilities resides in said menu. Outside the menu is a standard yet entertaining third-person action combat system. It's kinda like FF13 in a way, spamming attacks to fill up an enemy's stagger bar before unleashing on them. But throw in dodges, blocks, and everything else, and it becomes a chaotic and enjoyable affair. However, the game took a while to engage me. It starts off in a confusing manner, controlling Zack trying to save Aerith in the aftermath of the Midgard disaster that I assume the last game ended with. Things don't go well, and suddenly we're in the Calm Inn, and Cloud is regaling to his party the story of the mission he went on with Sephiroth in his soldier days. We start by exploring the town, and though I knew the story beats, having played the original game, entering Tifa's childhood home and spending time with Cloud's mother was not what I thought the game would use to ease me into its systems. And it wasn't. That came after, once the trek to the reactor started and the pacing I mentioned before kicked off. Despite that slow start, I'm looking forward to playing more. I'm interested in seeing how they've reinterpreted the middle third of FS7 in this modern shell. Though I guess I should go back and play through Remake first. I remember going over to my friend Dan's house in the late 2000s. He had a PS3 and had either Virtua Fighter 4 or 5 on it. We played for an afternoon. Now I had played Virtua Fighter 1 and 2 in the arcades back when they were new, and the idea of a 3D fighter was a novelty, but I've always liked the series. Its rhythms feel more hit and counter hit than other fighting games. It's not a favorite, but I assumed I would have a good time with this PC re-release, and what do you know? I was right. Most of the hour I spent with VF5 was in the tutorial section. I went through how to play the game and got stuck on certain things it wanted me to do, like offensive moves out of sidesteps or evading throws and hits the right way. After a crash course, I went to the character select screen and tried a few folks out, seeing if their fighting styles and movement gelled with me. I find this is always the toughest part of playing a new fighting game, finding the fighter that best suits my personality. If I'm playing with friends and the goal is to have a good time, I'll pick random and button mash to see if we can make something cool happen. But for single player, I have to find the right fighter. In the arcades, I always played Pai Chan, and while I tried a couple other ladies that I liked the look of, her quick acrobatic kicks were exactly how I wanted to express myself through combat. The tutorial has a mode where it will guide you through the moves line by line, and if you get stuck on how to pull a move off, you can watch the CPU do so with sound effects for button presses alongside the frame data. Now the problem is that once I get into the proper game, anything I've learned tends to go out the window, and I find myself grasping for remnants of how did I pull off that move again? After a couple rounds of button-mashed victory, I started to put some aspects together. I could see when I was going to be knocked down, so I could press the button for a quick recovery, and I felt my way through a couple moves and combos that did the trick. Even though I love the fighting game genre, I never seemed to have the time to dedicate myself to fully learn a character, but I imagine if I kept going through Pai's move list, it would eventually become second nature. Virtua Fighter 5 isn't the fighting game I'd like to dedicate myself to if I could find the time and motivation. But it's cool to see a PC release such a competent fighter all these years later. This is because the new entry is coming out in a year or two, isn't it? I haven't even played Miles Morales yet, and yet here he is. The game is called Spider-Man 2, and we're swapping between two Spider-Men. Funny how that works. Once the spectacle showcase that is the Sandman intro ends, and the city starts to open up, I got worried. 3 separate upgrade trees? One for Peter, one for Miles, and one for both of them? Then I thought about it for a minute and said, hey, but there were 3 trees in the original game. Granted, this one seems more complex, but so far that seems to be how this sequel works. It seems overwhelming, but then you start to play. You're checking off the side quests as you're swinging around town, and when you should stop playing, you want to keep going. The bigger issue at this point in time is that both Miles and Peter have access to different gadgets and different strengths. I can see that over time, a player will become comfortable with that, but at this early juncture, I was throwing out gadget and spider abilities anytime I had enough focus while relying on my strategy of base attacks, throwing stuff, and finishers I had honed from playing through the first game in late 2024. I remember it taking pretty much the whole game to get comfortable with all the gadgets and how useful they can be, and here I have that times 2. But the story moments are fun, the banter is amusing, and swinging through the city is as joyous as it's ever been. I love that I was stopping a crime and suddenly Miles showed up and was helping me out. I wonder how often emergent moments like that happen. Each borough of New York has its own progress bar this time around, so it feels like there's more of an incentive to clear each area. I wonder if it'll make the checklist aspect more annoying as the game goes on, seeing some of the rewards could be useful. And while I'm worrying, it could be the first week release of a PC port, but there were graphical glitches aplenty that I hope get ironed out by the time I get around to playing this all the way through. I'm not kidding that when it was time for my hour to be over, I wanted to keep exploring the city and filling that borough progress bar. This is the first game of the year where it was hard to tear myself away to write this script. I definitely need to get Miles Morales played as soon as possible so I can continue this tale of two city Spider-Men. Yet another game where the sequel comes out before I've gotten around to playing the original. I should really get that taken care of. Citizen Sleeper 2 is very much like the first game. You find yourself on a space station, taking on odd jobs and forming relationships in order to survive. You're a sleeper, which is a body you're loaning through a corporation. In the sequel, we find ourselves interrupted by this shady character called Lane while attempting a reboot, and we've lost our memories. We escape thanks to Seraphine, and it's obvious we were in a relationship with them, but due to our reboot amnesia, things are tricky. And to top it all off, Lane is now looking for us. Our ship needs repairs, so it's time to find work, which mostly means salvaging derelict spacecraft. The dice system makes a return. Each day you have 5 dice to put into decision trees to make progress towards unlocking goals. The class you chose at the start of the game makes this easier or tougher, but usually there's at least 2 ways to complete a goal, allowing for different skill sets. When you salvage, you take crew along, which have different skills that can help, but the trick in the salvage missions is that you only have so many days worth of supplies, so each failure can fill the stress meter, as well as cause a reaction from the vessel you've landed on. This could be a security system coming online, or the integrity of the ship itself deteriorating. Compared to these missions, earning enough cryo to keep fed on the space station is downright relaxing. And I love that a game that's mainly text and dice rolls is able to create these moments of tension. I find myself making decisions based on resource management and how the rolls of the dice go. Is it worth risking failure so I don't have to waste another day of supplies? I wonder if as the game continues, and I gain not only more understanding of how to play, but fill out the skill tree as well, if such decisions will become less tense, or if the game will become significantly more punishing to compensate. Either way, I'm interested in finding out more about what my character was getting up to before the failed reboot, and if we can make a life for ourselves amidst such hostility. I was interested in Urban Myth Dissolution Center due to the art style. There's so many style possibilities with pixel art, and I like not only the anime aesthetic of the game, but also its use of color. It's high contrast, and I think it helps the horrific scenes pop. I was a little worried about such scary moments, but that it looked like an Ace Attorney game about an anomaly-focused detective agency made me want to take the plunge. The main character, Azami, finds herself searching out the center because she's always been able to see specters and wants help in managing it, understanding it, or making it go away. She meets the director, who, from my perspective, tricks her into debt through a cursed chair, and thus we're working for the agency. The first case features a good friend of Azami who's being flamed online about a shadowy man that appeared in her apartment. The gameplay is general investigation fare. When not searching social media, you talk to witnesses, investigate hotspots to understand the layout of the room, and make inferences as to what actually happened. There are 2 modes of exam-style inference. When you first meet a person, you answer a question about their personality to add them to your journal, but the questions are insultingly simple, at least compared to the inferences one has to make about the particulars of the case. Well, I say that, but after a few of them, I started to get what the game wanted from me. The answers are simple, it's just that they've been broken into pieces. In my hour, I didn't get to finish the first case, and the actions of the anomaly escalated each in-game day, so I'm interested to see how it all plays out, even though I doubt a happy ending. I think the premise and presentation are enough to make me want to play through Urban Myth Dissolution Center and see just where the story goes. I'd love to learn more about the director's vision ability and if the ideas presented in this game are scarier than the anomalies themselves. I just hope the inferences don't get any more complicated, or else I'll be frustrated enough to think the game's internal logic is an urban myth. I've never really played a Musou game, but choosing companions and power-ups to descend further and further into the underworld, wrapped in a spammy combat coding in Warrior's Abyss, intrigued me. Some roguelikes ease you into their gameplay systems, while others dump you in the deep end and say good luck. Warrior's Abyss is kind of in the middle. There are tutorials that pop up with great frequency, but they didn't help as much as what I learned by starting new games over and over again in my hour of game time. The hero select screen is absolutely ludicrous. Maybe if I had played a Dynasty Warriors game before, I'd appreciate that my favorite characters are all available from the start, but here I didn't know where to begin. Luckily, there are random heroes with crystals on them that will enable bonuses, so I always chose a new crystal person every attempt. Another element to lessen the confusion is that when acquiring a new attribute orb or adding a new character to your party that opens up bonuses, abilities, and can be summoned in battle, there is a simple score counter in the bottom right. Bigger number supposedly means better options. I imagine once I have a deeper knowledge of the characters and their synergies, I might want to make my own choices. But then, I think the number takes synergies into account. The combat itself is pretty simplistic. Light attacks, charge attacks, a dodge on a timer, a special move that can be built up, and a group attack that can be built up. I did like how I could hold the light and charge attack buttons down for combos instead of having to tap them. The enemies come in swarms, with tougher varieties being more dangerous. When a wave ends, you can usually recruit a new character, change the configuration of them, which is its own system to learn, and choose which level to enter next, with what kind of reward you'd like. All until you reach the boss. I was not able to defeat the first boss, but I got close. I was learning more about when to summon a team and how to take advantage of weakened states, but it felt like I had just scratched the surface. Warrior's Abyss seems like it's got a lot to consider, and while I had a fun enough time playing it, I do wonder if it had held my attention until I defeated the final boss. I fear it might be one of those games that's a mile wide but only a foot deep. I almost did a double take when the intro of Avowed played, and I found myself in the same lands as Pillars of Eternity. I had no idea. Of course, instead of a classic Infinity Engine RPG, here combat has a first-person action focus like Elder Scrolls. The island your character the Envoy finds themselves washed up on doles out gameplay mechanics in short bursts as you explore it, trying to find answers as to why you were shipwrecked, as well as a way off it. I made my character a scholar and was annoyed how long it took to get my hands on some magic, but when I did, I was loving the result. That first island took the majority of my hour. I made it to Paradise and gained a companion character to start my main quest of researching this dream scourge that is threatening to envelop the land. But aside from walking a little around town, accepting a side quest, and making camp for the night, I have no idea how open the game becomes after that linear tutorial. I will say I balked when I scrolled out on the map after accepting the first side quest. I thought I would just have to walk around a block, but her house turned out to be a ways away. I thought the game looked lush enough. I liked the different colored mushrooms around the place, and the characters like Garrick or Kai, who are of a different species. When making camp, I got to speak to Kai and open up a little more about who he is, and he even questioned me about why I'm here. It was a great character building moment for both of us, and continued the solid voice acting that I've come to expect from an Obsidian RPG. The thing is, an hour gave me such a small taste of what this game actually is. I feel I need to play more just to understand it better. This is why I used to play games for 10% of their how long to beat completion time. One of the genres I enjoy the most, the RPG, sadly happens to be one of the genres that takes the most time to get off the ground. I mean, it's not always this way, but it is in the case of Avowed. I don't even really know if I like it or not, and that's something I want to find out. In Wanderstop, we play Alta, who collapses from burnout in front of a tea shop. The owner, Bolo, offers us a job to tend the grounds while looking after customers until we're well enough to continue our journey. An early conversation with Bolo, after the game opens up, is Alta asking what to do next, and Bolo responding that while there are many things one could do, sometimes it's best to make yourself a cup of tea, find a place to sit, and just enjoy the scenery. Alta was frustrated by this almost as much as I was as a player. I want to make progress, but I followed the advice and made a cup of tea. I found a place to sit next to these cute little birds, and Alta unlocked a memory of her past. I seemingly made progress by relaxing and enjoying the moment. Well played, Wanderstop. Well played. Taking a moment to reflect and enjoy life didn't stop me from getting a head start on procuring the ingredients I needed to make tea, all so I'd be ready for any customers. Sure enough, as I was scouring the edges of the shop grounds for tea leaves, a knight runs up to me. Talking to him, I laughed as he showed me pictures of his son. I was enjoying learning about who this knight is and why he's at the tea shop. I was engaged by Alta's story from the opening moments, and I'm curious about who Bolo is, even though I already have my suspicions. While this feels like a game about planting berries, mixing plants, and experimenting with tea flavors, what has pulled me in aside from the colorful visuals is the characters themselves. I have a feeling customers like the knight will come back, and I'll get to learn more about them, just like I'll learn more about Alta as I unlock a memory with each new tea infused and enjoyed. I've heard some complain how convoluted it is to make tea, and I'll say I did get confused on many of the steps myself. From growing berries to infusing the tea to washing the cups. It's not as intuitive as I would like, and some of the contextual button presses on the tea maker are fiddly. But just like Alta is learning to slow down and enjoy the process of tea making for its own sake, I feel Wanderstop is trying to get the player to slow down and enjoy existing in this game world. It's worked on me, and while much of the appeal is making progress by meeting and learning more about these characters, I understand that the process itself will be a slow one, and I'm okay with that. This is definitely a vibes game. So much so that it felt wrong for me to sit down with a cup of coffee while I was playing it. I did, however, make coffee before sitting down to write this script. I'll leave the tea for inside the game.
So, you like grinding, eh? Well, have all the grinding in the world!
My foray into idle games continues with Nomad Idle, which is an incremental progression game based around killing monsters for loot and experience, JRPG style. What makes this unique is that the player can choose when to set off certain attacks or leave them automated if the game needs to go idle. I mean, it's right there in the title. You gain experience, which can be used to level up attributes, and there are quests that unlock at certain milestones. What I liked is that each quest is a small piece of writing that furthers the story of the game, and I appreciate the different colors and animations on certain words, giving it an added flair. But despite having a story and unlocking summoned pet companions, I wasn't as interested in progression as I was in the previous two incremental games I've played this year. I think this is more a true idler, as even with control over the spells, watching the enemies die over and over again is monotonous, and the upgrades don't come quickly enough to have something for the player to do. But I think it speaks to the compulsion of this style of game that despite not enjoying my time with Nomad Idle, I still want to keep going. I want to unlock more upgrades, and due to its nature, I can keep it running in the background while I tend to other things. I wonder if I've already burnt out on the concept through the 3 games I've tried in this genre, or if Nomad Idle is just missing an element that made the others pop. I guess we'll see if I end up covering more idle games later on in the video. I loved my hour with South of Midnight. It operates on fairy tale logic, with our protagonist Hazel trying to rescue her mother who was washed away in a flood, finding herself guided by strands to uncover a pair of hooks that she uses to battle the encroaching darkness, all while seeing echoes of the past as new abilities are taught to her. In game terms, South of Midnight has a nice interchanging pace between platforming, combat, cutscenes, and exploration to get more upgrade currency. Everything is simple, but nothing overstays its welcome, and I became intrigued by Hazel's quest and what new sights, wonders, and horrors she'll find along the way. What sold me on the game early on is the stop-motion animation style. The movements are jerky, but in that handcrafted way, which is the same with the character designs. Hazel's mother and Mrs. Peel show their age thanks to the lines on their face, while their neighbor, who's a big softie, has rounded, non-threatening features. This is in contrast to Hazel's grandmother Bunny, whose design screamed villain from the first moments I saw her and her housekeeper Lily. That she locks Hazel in a guest room didn't do much to make me think any different, but I am interested to see if something else is influencing her actions. I love how South of Midnight looks, sounds, and feels to play. It's a game I want to experience in its entirety, and I even thought that I'd enjoy making a critique on it or streaming it sometime soon, but one aspect of the game gives me pause. Hazel is black, and the fairy tale nature of the game, not to mention that Chapter 2 is following the ghosts of those running away from a plantation, speaks to this not only being informed by it taking place in the American South, but specifically highlighting a black experience. Now personally, I love it when I can experience art from a culture other than my own, empathizing and learning through the work itself. It's just that when it comes to critique, analysis, or even my reactions, I feel uncomfortable as a white guy from the US who now lives in Australia saying anything more than, "I like this game and I think you should play it." I'm definitely going to be playing through it as I've had a great time so far. It just feels like I should be keeping my opinions to myself. The thing I appreciated most about my hour with Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is how I desired more context. As I walked Sophie and Gustav through the town of Lumiere, I talked to everyone that the game would let me converse with. Each conversation filled in more of why the world is in the state it is, why everyone is feeling so mournful, and what's at stake for the expedition that Gustav has signed himself up for. It's just enough information to let the player guess what's about to happen, but little enough that when the grammage begins, I was shocked. I won't show it here, so those of you who haven't played the game yet can experience it yourself, but it sets up the stakes of the world nicely and makes the upcoming expedition vitally important. And setup is really all I had in my hour of play. I got to inhabit the world, I found some lumina, which is either money or upgrade currency, and I had a couple of fights. Those are exciting. It's turn-based JRPG combat, but it's not really turn-based JRPG combat. Like the Paper Mario games, your damage can be amplified by timing button presses correctly, and incoming damage can be avoided with a dodge or returned with a parry. There was a quest from a painter who wanted Gustav to dodge Sophie's attacks 3 times in a row, and while that was somewhat easy, due to the attacks slowing down to telegraph when I should press the dodge button, the fight with the mime or the rematch against Mael proved more difficult. Luckily, with Mael, her attacks weren't that harsh, so my mistakes weren't heavily punished. But from what I've heard about the game, that won't be the case for long. And while the presentation is spectacular and the combat engaging, it's the time I've already spent with these characters in this world that makes me want to continue. I haven't even finished the prologue yet, and already I like the members of the expedition. I look forward to not only getting to know their personalities as the story continues, but their utility in combat. So many people whose opinion I give weight to have gushed about Clair Obscur since it came out. I'm writing this script a few months after its release, so I was anxious to see if it would live up to the hype, and at least for me, it has. I think it helps that the tone it sets is melancholic, but not oppressive. There's this tightrope-esque balance between the world's beauty and what's befalling it that the game deftly walks, and I'd like to see how long Clair Obscur can keep such a tightrope act going on for. I became interested in the 100-line Last Defense Academy because it's a collaboration between Kotaro Uchikoshi of Zero Escape fame and Kazutaka Kodaka of Danganronpa fame. I am a fan of the former, not so much the latter, but was curious about what a game with both of them at the helm would look like. After the first hour, I can definitely see Kodaka's influence, but not Uchikoshi's. See if this sounds familiar. There's a school that represents the last hope for humanity. A collection of teenagers with different skill sets and temperaments have been thrown into this school by a weird mascot character against their will. They're told frustratingly little about why they were chosen, why they're there, and why any of this is happening. Sounds like Danganronpa to me. And this might just be personal taste, but aside from our protagonist, I didn't find myself wanting to learn more about any of these characters. I hope that changes as more layers of this narrative onion are peeled back, but I have a feeling that might not be the case. Aside from the visual novel shenanigans, there's also a turn-based strategy game. The kids are able to summon great power by plunging a sword into their chest, and each has a unique set of attacks to take out the strange invaders who are threatening humanity. It reminded me a lot of 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which is a game I definitely have to get back to. One hopes that the 100 line also keeps a good balance between combat and story revelation. Now, as down as I am on the 100 line so far due to its setup, I'm curious about where this story will take me and if I'll grow to like any of the characters. Maybe I'm just a sucker for an anime mystery game. At least the visuals, voice acting, and music is all of a high quality. The 100-line Last Defense Academy is definitely a case of, I want to play it, but I'm doubtful as to whether or not I'll have a good time. We've had a few games in the last decade where we play a bartender or barista as we talk to customers and learn more about their lives while helping them with their troubles. What makes Best Served Cold unique is that a local policeman enlists your help in solving a murder. You see, this country is under prohibition, and speakeasies are technically illegal, but a murder of a young woman happened outside one, so your help as a bartender is being enlisted to loosen the lips of your varied clientele by getting them drunk before probing them with questions in order to find clues and solve the case. Oh, and there's a deadline of 2 weeks, otherwise your speakeasy is no longer of use and might be shut down. I have to admit that it's the time limit that gives me pause when playing Best Served Cold. So much of the game is about getting to know the characters, which drinks they like, what you can ask them about and when, and choosing the right dialogue options to ingratiate yourself with them so they'll talk more about the case. I have a feeling that gathering clues, making deductions, and solving the case won't take the full 2 weeks, but the anxiety of the deadline makes me want to play through this story with a walkthrough so I don't feel the stress of the ticking clock looming over my head. It makes me wonder about the need for the minigame when mixing drinks. It's so simple, and I guess it's something to do, but the one time I messed up a drink because my mouse got hung up on a direction change, I reloaded the autosave of when the character sat down at the bar before succeeding in making said drink. Why wouldn't you not just reload when failing lowers the character's opinion of you, meaning you're wasting time that could be used asking them probing questions after being liquored up? So, while I'd like to experience an optimal playthrough of this story because I like the atmosphere, I mean, you're bartending at a speakeasy inside of a bookstore, how cool is that? I find the mixing minigame and the time limit more annoying than immersive. It feels like the desire to add more gameplay consequences to the visual novel roots of previous games of this type has not been as successful as I hoped it would be when I watched the trailer and found myself excited by the premise. Maybe it'll work better in the sequel. Preserve reminds me a bit of Terrascape, which I covered in last year's Impressions video, but on an incremental scale. You're given a small slice of barren land. You need to use the watering cards at your disposal to make the land fertile, before creating a habitat, or preserve as the game calls it. As increments of the same tiles link to each other, you'll be able to use an animal card to inhabit the preserve. And if you can create a preserve of 12 tiles with 3 animals of the same type, you get a point bonus. Every tile laid down adds points to your score, and at certain milestones, new packs of water, preserve, and animal cards will appear in your hand, as well as the ability to attach new slices of land to the play space. The goal is to fulfill the level's point threshold through placing the right preserves in the right areas to maximize points, bringing the land to life. Like many strategy games, I found myself making errors as I was working out how to play. Reaching the first point threshold would unlock the next level, but then I noticed that there were additional point thresholds to reach in the levels I had already completed. It feels like the game wants you to keep moving forward, and not only learn the new cards and systems introduced in each new level, but to gain a greater understanding of the core gameplay before coming back and creating a better biome to thrash these greater thresholds. And as I was attempting each new level, Preserve's visual style and music created a relaxing atmosphere. Even though I was bungling through my card placements, I felt that it didn't matter, because I learned more as I played more, instead of that feeling that I should keep restarting in order to create the perfect placement from the get-go. It was difficult sometimes to fight that instinct because of how rivers work, granting a hefty bonus from creating a river that's 18 tiles long. But chasing the placement of a long river can cause problems as you no longer have the tiles to place other cards. It's an interesting mix of planning ahead while playing the cards you're dealt. And keep in mind, this is only after an hour with the game. I haven't checked out any of the other biomes, let alone what further gameplay systems might be unveiled as one continues down the path of preservation. In the end, I enjoyed my time with the game because it's engaging and low stress, but sadly, unlike Terrascape, it didn't preserve my desire to play further. With its narrator telling us a story out of Arabian Nights when playing The Siege and the Sandfox, it's not hard to think of Prince of Persia, especially with one of the recent entries being a Metroidvania. The country is at war, and so the titular Sandfox runs to the palace to see if he can help the king. When he gets there, he witnesses the queen murdering the monarch. She pins the crime on him, stabs him in the heart with his own glass dagger, and throws him down a shaft called the Traitor's Fall. Somehow our player character survives, is able to move around again, and thus begins our game of escape and revenge. The art style of the characters reminded me of Metal Slug. I liked the lighting and general look of the environments. Lighting is important because at its heart, Siege and the Sandfox is a stealth game. Extinguishing torches, crouching to keep sound to a minimum, hiding behind logs or in pods, and generally avoiding the sight of guards is what's for dinner. The game even gives you a blackjack after showing you a guard with a helmet that can't be affected by your weapon. The first true get through this unscathed section had me booted back to the checkpoint 3 or 4 times, and I think that's because for how nimble the Sandfox can be, the controls don't always allow that affordance to the player. The wall jump is a good place to start. I was asked to run up walls before wall jumping or to hang off a ledge and slide down the wall before leaping elsewhere. The sections that require precise inputs like these that showcase an impressive looking sequence are undercut by the immediacy of needing to press the jump button the instant you make contact with the wall. This led to times when I felt the need to spam the jump button to wall jump and ruin whatever move I was trying to do afterward. But when I tried to be intentional with my inputs, I would miss the window for the button press. The platforming has this tension between precision and spamming buttons that made me feel like I never had full control over my character. Which is a shame, because alongside the delightful narration and mood of the game, I like how progression loops the player back around, exploring new areas before unlocking a new ability and returning to a previous zone via a new path. I've never played a stealth Metroidvania before, and definitely not one with such narrative texture. If I felt more confident in pulling off the platforming and stealth that the game required of me, I'd be more enthusiastic about recommending the Siege and the Sandfox. I'll likely play through it. I just know that it won't be as smooth an experience as I'd want it to be. Man, that sure was a lot of Sandfox to Siege. If you're enjoying the video so far, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really helps the channel out. We're a little over halfway through the video. Do you think any of the games that have appeared so far will make it to my top 10? Why not leave your guesses down in the comments? And now, let's continue. One aspect I appreciated in Undertale was how, despite its light tone, conveyed mostly by cute characters, funny writing, and catchy music, it could turn sinister in a heartbeat. That's part of Deltarune too, mostly through one of your party members, Susie. She's actually scarier than most of the enemies you end up fighting, or the clown who's harassing you as a papyrus stand-in. After a confusing character creation intro, we wake up controlling Chris, get taken to school, and then lose ourselves in the supply closet as we're taken to another world. This first hour of game was an exercise in opposite emotions. For the first 30 minutes, as Chris is exploring the dream world, I was into the atmosphere and writing. We find ourselves at a castle and run into Ralsei, who tells us we are prophesized to save their kingdom. This is when the battle system introduces itself and my issues with the game began. The ability to end all battles in a peaceful manner returns, but instead of a one-on-one affair, we're controlling a party. I'll start by saying it's cool how Susie acts on her own, and if you don't want enemies to get clobbered by her, you can warn them of her rage, causing her attacks to miss. It's just that non-violent play feels like more of a multi-step process now, using Chris to get the enemy on your side, and then using Ralsei to spare them. When you have multiples of the same enemy type, these actions become tedious. And that's before certain encounters respawn if you go exploring on a new screen and come back. So the pace of the battles, the unsatisfying puzzles, and dealing with a wannabe villain quickly soured the enjoyment towards Deltarune I was feeling in the beginning. Honestly, more than anything, Playing Deltarune made me want to go back and finally play that pacifist run of Undertale I've been planning since 2016. That was a case of right game hitting me at the right time, and any similar magic I felt from starting Deltarune quickly wore off the further I played.
No sleep for dun 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 Date!
Kaname Date. Yeah, for some reason, when I first heard the name of the game, my mind went to the Beastie Boys. Dave's brain, ladies and gentlemen. Dave's brain. Anyways, this is an offshoot of the two AI The Somnium Files games by Zero Escape creator Kotaro Uchikoshi. I still haven't played them, and I really should get on that, but I wanted to check out this latest release. We play Iris, an internet idol who's been kidnapped by aliens and locked in the same type of escape rooms I'm used to from the Zero Escape games, with possibly less death. The Lizard Queen who has kidnapped us talks of wanting to reset humanity with only the best of the best, hence the puzzle rooms. With a comms line to Detective Kaname Date, we start solving puzzles. I wish I enjoyed this more than I did. The progression of the puzzle room is neat, but the dialogue is rather tedious and it just grinds the solving to a halt. I'm also a bit salty that I had to look up how to use the anti-gravity tablet. I knew the next step the game wanted from me, but I didn't know how to make it happen. I also found it frustrating how a big item in the world will have a label to click on, but then all the smaller areas are up to the player to discover for themselves. Just show me what's interactable. I wondered if it was the pacing of the game making me bored, the idea of playing an abducted young woman dressed like this for whatever reason, or that I've outgrown this style of game. I mean, it's been close to 15 years since I first fell in love with 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors. Tastes change. Maybe it'd hit better if I played the other Somnium Files games first. I still want to give those a try, but yeah, there may be no sleep for Kaname Date, but after playing an hour of this, I think it transferred to me instead. There's a magic trick that Death Stranding pulls off that I felt in this sequel when walking through a sandstorm. One of Death Stranding's strengths was that it made the act of walking, something we all take for granted in a video game, into an engaging mechanic. Where to put your feet, how quickly to move, and how to shift your balance turned every trek outdoors into a mix of planning, execution, and readjustment. While engaging, this doesn't overshadow that walking can be boring. Often the landscape, any music playing, or our own thoughts are enough to keep things entertaining, but sometimes our main mode of moving through this world can be tedious. I mean, we do it without thinking. The magic trick is that in Death Stranding and Death Stranding 2, this act of walking can be both boring and engaging simultaneously. The sandstorm obscures the surrounding landscape. I could only see a few feet in front of me, yet knew the direction I had to travel in. As this is the early game, the terrain during this first storm was flat for the most part, hitting me when I was traveling through a ruined settlement. But because I was still moving in the direction I wanted to travel, the boredom of walking over flat terrain without marveling at the surrounding landscapes was tempered by the progress I was making. I was also thinking that if a sandstorm were to hit me on a cliffside, the act of moving forward to see where I'm headed would be all the more perilous. The first walking section of the game showcases this possibility, when an earthquake causes a landslide and I had to work my way around. It also didn't help that while scanning the landscape, there can be footsteps that I assume show you the path others have taken. Following one such set took me away from where I was headed. With the quakes and sandstorms, alongside the rainfall of the first game, I get the feeling environmental disasters will be a prominent part of the sequel. As I was given an assault rifle and pistol, I wonder if fighting groups of bandits will be more of a focus as well. I snuck around their compound, taking out any stragglers silently, and sneaking away to a ruined bridge even when the game told me I'd been spotted. Aside from a taste of the traversal during this first hour, Sam is called back into action to link Mexico up to the chiral network. The cast list at the start of the game shows off returning characters, as Fragile finds Sam and Lou living their lives before giving him his new marching orders. The game gave me an option to refuse the call to action, but then the cutscene looped. I was given the choice again, and then the ability to refuse was removed. Don't give me such choices if I don't have a say in how things go. That's really the only part of the game that irked me so far. But I am curious to see what Death Stranding 2 has to say, given the first was so prescient about the global pandemic a year before it hit. I'm always a sucker for Kojima's games, warts and all. An hour didn't get me very far, but it looks and feels like a whole new Death Stranding adventure. While the first game was a little too silly at times, and I spent far too many hours grinding packages to build roads, I ultimately enjoyed my experience, and I hope I can say the same about the sequel when I finally get through it. Idlers like Game of Grass come the closest as to showing me what it must be like to be a billionaire. After a while, the numbers don't fucking matter. The upgrade tree is most similar to Idle Colony, and I approached it in the same way. I wanted to upgrade the cheapest options first, but after a while, I started approximating. Okay, I'll get all the thousands to 2, and before long I'll get all the 200,000s to 3, until I'll get all the 3 millions to 4. And so it goes. The exponential growth happens so gradually, you have to step back and think about it before you realize how ridiculous the numbers you've been playing with are. Anyways, the premise of the game is that your neighbor thinks your lawn is getting a bit unkempt, so you take your sword and start cutting it. Cutting grass equals money, so you're soon buying birds to increase how quickly it grows, and cats and cows, which heighten the multiplier. Passers-by will increase their yields, and new crops such as beets and turnips can be grown for passive income. Before long, you can unlock a prestige portal, where you can spend your special grass on permanent upgrades, resetting the game. Just like in the other idle games I played for this project, resetting the game allows you to earn more money more quickly, before you reset again to further speedrun this hamster wheel of success. The weirdness of this idler is how you need to be present to cut the grass. Yes, there is the passive income streams, such as the other veggies, juicers, and grass launchers, but the core of the game is cutting down your lawn with better swords and special attacks. At least at first. By my second time through the prestige portal, I only needed to mow the lawn for less than a minute when I ran out of money, before I had the cash influx to buy a load of upgrades all at once. I'm sure at some point you never need to touch the grass yourself, but I had not yet reached that point. I think this will be another one I'd enjoy playing in my spare time. I can't really let it play on its own in the background like I could with Idle Colony, and it's not as engaging as Digseum, but I'm interested to see what odd animals, onlookers, and strange passive income streams appear when I upgrade my grass type again. They finally did it. Someone gamified watching grass grow. Now where's the paint drying game? You know that sequence from Journey where you're surfing on the sand? Sword of the Sea is like if that and Abzu had a baby. Honestly, it feels like the general progression of Giant Squid's games, with the pathless being more about movement and momentum. It's hard not to think of Journey though, which is fine because Journey is great, but does Sword of the Sea carve out enough of its own identity? Kind of. It's a lot of fun to surf the sand dunes. Movement is fluid. The jump and double jump animations are flashy, and you can stop on a dime. I spent most of my hour following what I felt was the way the game wanted me to go. I did find some side stuff exploring the world, but I didn't feel the need to explore as much as I usually do, and I bet there's a lot of secrets that I missed. The thing is, aside from the fun of surfing around and the lovely visuals and music, the game's engagement stayed level. I didn't feel any highs or lows in my immersion until I freed the Great Dolphin. I don't want to spoil anything past the first area in my footage for those who wish to play Sword of the Sea, but what feels like a new and novel twist on the gameplay showcased thus far ended up being shallow and more than a little frustrating. Which is kind of how I'm feeling about Sword of the Sea as a whole. This feels like a game I'll play through on stream one day, and it'll have some impressive moments that keep me and those watching engaged, but it won't stick around in my memory. Abzu was like that. I do wonder what's missing, because the game feel is so comfortable and it's a visual marvel. As weird as it might be for me to say this, considering my tastes, I think Sword of the Sea could have used some friction. So, often when games start out with long cutscenes, I say to myself, I don't care about your lore and backstory, just let me play your damn game. It's a testament to the Metal Gear Solid series that I never feel that way. The intro for this remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 is over 15 minutes long, and yet I was riveted the entire time. The 10-minute codec conversation afterwards was taking the piss a bit, but it was at least engaging. I was just annoyed by the game finally letting me control the character, only to take it away for yet another prolonged period. I haven't played Metal Gear Solid 3 for close to 15 years. I can't remember how it played, but I did replay Metal Gear Solid 2 earlier in 2025, so I have that for comparison. This remake feels a lot better to control. The camera is more fluid and doesn't fight the player, and actions feel easier to perform. The controls of those early MGS games were always so unique in terms of how they worked. Depending on who you ask, they can be charming or confusing. Regardless, it takes some getting used to, and upon controlling Snake, I felt like I was playing a modern action title. I think the design is still intact too. I remember these early screens. I remember the alligators, the mud, and shooting the beehives to distract the guards. I'm lucky the guard AI is fairly dumb on the easy difficulty, so I was able to retreat into the grass after I shuffled out of it, finding the guard I had lost sight of right in front of me. This mission is a stealth mission, so I wanted to get through unseen and make my moves at the right time. This took patience, and it was enjoyable to start to experiment with the game's systems. The only negative is that the player spends a lot of time in the survival menu, but that was an issue with the original game as well. Sooner or later, I'm planning on replaying Metal Gear Solid 3 using the Bluepoint remaster I have on the PS3, but it's nice to know there's such a polished version of the game waiting for me afterwards, cause I'm curious about just how different Delta is to the original, aside from updated visuals and modern controls. With a remaster of MGS3 now available on all major platforms, it does make me wonder why this was made in the first place, but hey, at least it's solid. It might be a good thing that I didn't get around to replaying Hollow Knight this year. The experience of the original game is so far back in my memory that while I saw design echoes of Hollow Knight while playing Silksong, it felt fresh and novel. I mean, having a new character with a different skill set in a different part of the world helps too. I'm still getting used to not having a downslash and pogo, but if I had replayed Hollow Knight, I'm unsure whether or not Silksong might feel like too much of a good thing, rather than a sequel that deserves its own identity. I'm calling this the Tears of the Kingdom conundrum. We start the game with Hornet being captured. Along the way to wherever these bugs are taking her, a strange internal power erupts and she plummets into a chasm. Through this tutorial section, we learn that something is not right with Hornet, and she might not have control over her own power. Once we make it to the main town, the design of the game makes itself known. In the tutorial, I found myself searching everywhere for secrets, and this included jumping down holes to see if any cliff faces jutted out, hiding currency. As I continued exploring, I found these sojourns were sending me back to the bottom of the chasm more often than not, and I'd have to spend time climbing out again. Even when making it to town, I jumped down one last hole and had to repeat the process. There is a great chapel at the top of this world, and the bugs are pilgrims making the climb, many losing themselves to some form of madness. In my hour, I unlocked shortcuts, including an elevator back to town, and everything I've seen reinforces the idea that Silksong will be spent climbing ever upwards. I've already seen a couple different zones full of lush art that wowed me, so I have no fears about variety, and the Hollow Knight mechanics of progression still feel familiar all these years later. I found the character that sells the map, I found my first ability, and I'm learning how the magic system works and how that affects healing. Really, I just want to jump back into the game, so I can continue exploring and gaining a mastery over the world while learning more about Hornet's powers. I wonder just how big this world is compared to Hollow Knight. Part of the joy of that game was that there seemed to be an endless amount of new zones, and while I hope Silksong doesn't outstay its welcome by being too big, I sure am happy to be playing a new Hollow Knight game after all this time. Maybe it's the art style of Jotunnslayer Hordes of Hel that makes me think the Vampire Survivors formula would work well for a Diablo game. I definitely care more about classes in Jotunnslayer than I have in any other auto-battler. That made my hour with the game tricky. Was the bad time I was having early on because of the class I was playing, or was it because I didn't yet understand the rhythms of gameplay? I think it's a little of both. My final attempt at the game was with the Revenant class, a ranger type. Keeping approaching enemies at bay with arrows while summoning ghost wolves is completely my jam. The Berserker felt a little too stale, and I think I botched upgrading the Seeress to properly enjoy the class. And I also played her attempt on normal instead of easy, almost not making it to the end. I think by the time I played the Revenant, I was more adept at balancing upgrading the class itself alongside adding boons from the gods. The structure of the game is you collect EXP from downed enemies while taking on missions. Complete enough missions and the boss will be waiting for you. Defeat the boss and use your spoils to unlock permanent upgrades, as well as new classes, levels, and modifiers. It's a game loop I'm more than familiar with at this point. Now, this is the first auto-battler since Vampire Survivors I've enjoyed playing, but even still, it feels lethargic compared to the king of the genre. The characters move too slowly, and you feel that when trying to avoid colliding into enemies. The dash is a welcome addition, but its cooldown means you're using it situationally. I wonder if I'll get to permanently upgrade class speed, as each class and each god have their own upgrade tree. I think it will make the game feel snappier to play, which is a shame, because I think it could use that quickness early on to hook players into its game loop. But I'm already on board. The question I have is if I should keep trying out new classes, or because I enjoy the Revenant so much, if I should check out all the new levels and modifiers with only that class, using my points to upgrade its tree exclusively. The next level doesn't have the ability to play on easy, which might be a problem since that means the game's timer is longer, which I think allows the slower pace of the game to seep into the player, causing them to wonder why these characters feel so sluggish. Maybe there's a reason Vampire Survivors uses such simple art assets. I've never played a survival horror game where every encounter felt so life or death. Cronos: The New Dawn would have never been on my radar, but after watching Noah Gervais's critique of it, and enjoying the atmosphere of the demo, I decided to give it a try. The third encounter I had with the base level creatures of Cronos killed me multiple times. When I finally defeated it, I had no ammo and almost no health. I tried to run around it, wildly tapping the melee button and praying for success. The area immediately afterwards is a large open space that filled me with dread. That there was a workbench to upgrade my character, and buy a small amount of ammunition and health, did nothing to calm my anxiety towards when the next enemy encounter might occur. Now that's effective survival horror. Some sort of plague has infested what I think is Poland. The game auto-translates any written graffiti, and the notes speak of trying to save the populace from this contagion, as well as nihilistic warnings from other travelers that came here before your character. What the traveler is and why they are here is unknown at this juncture, but stepping out of the first area and seeing something unbelievable combined with my character's spaceship, shell of a spacesuit, and futuristic technology gives the game a science fiction edge that made me curious to uncover what's going on. Which might be easier than discovering where to go. I had some trouble finding the way forward on more than one occasion, missing the white paint amongst the dark muted tones of the interiors, or my most embarrassing fumble, not noticing that I could burn away a biomass in the same room I received the torch in. Aside from that, the game feels good to control. I just wish I was more adept at aiming with a controller. Headshots stagger these creatures, but through my panicked firing, I was lucky to hit their domes. It doesn't help that charging the shot for more damage can't be saved for the most opportune moment, but instead fires the instant it's charged. With my issues aiming, this meant that more often than not, I just wasted ammo. Now, I'm not that into survival horror, but ever since the first Resident Evil, I've noticed the genre has moved towards more and more of an action focus. And it's nice to play a game that, at least early on, makes every enemy encounter dangerous and thus memorable. Maybe it's a new dawn for future survival horror titles. So first this year, I find myself playing multiple incremental/idle games, and now it's auto shooters. They kind of scratch the same gaming itch, and Deep Rock Galactic Survivor is a good example as to why. I wouldn't say I was necessarily engaged with the gameplay, or enjoying my time with it, but through its short levels, consistent unlocks, and frequent level ups, I was compelled to keep playing. The first thing that struck me about the game was I had to go through about 4 menus to actually play it. There is so much to unlock. So many levels, characters, and modifiers, and yet when the game begins, you only have one option. Just throw me in the game already, before exhausting me at the scope of your progression system. Once we get in, however, things are rock solid. You're a dwarf landing on a planet full of minerals to mine. There are plenty of bugs that take issue with you landing on their planet, and they begin to swarm you in increasing numbers with increasing ferocity. Each drops experience when squished, and each time the EXP bar is cleared, you can upgrade your weapons from a pool of possibilities, with some appearing more commonly than others. Small increases to damage, reload, fire rate, critical hits, armor, and health. Every now and then you can add another weapon to your 4 slots, grab an artifact, or mod existing weapons. Grow your power, as each stage goes through an ebb and flow that quickly becomes comforting in its familiarity. The bar at the top of the screen shows the level milestones. Each killed bug fills the bar. Swarms will trigger regularly, as will a supply drop, and at the end, a boss. The longer the boss takes to be killed, the stronger the enemies become. Once the boss is defeated, the dropship appears, and you have a shorter window to escape the planet before hitting the next one. This continues until you die, or reach the final boss for the area and emerge victorious. In between levels, you can use mined minerals to further upgrade your stats, while doing the same in between runs for permanent upgrades. There's gear to equip, and all manner of gated unlocks to keep a player running on this hamster wheel of progression as long as possible. I think that the brazenness with which Deep Rock Galactic Survivor shoves how long you'll be chipping away at its unlocks in your face does it a disservice. Aside from the dwarves' lines quickly wearing out their welcome, the game loop is engaging enough for me to want to play a round or 2 every day or so. It's just seeing the vast sea of hours needed to keep pushing forward that makes me want to put the game down before it can get its claws into me any further. Strange Antiquities oozes atmosphere. The shop feels cozy, and the ambient sounds and music create a contrast to what the shop is and what oddities it contains. The cat doesn't hurt either. You play the apprentice to a thaumaturge who has to leave on business and puts you in charge of his store. Locals come in asking for trinkets to help solve their problems. You access the tome to get an idea of what they're asking for, peruse the shelves looking for hints, before choosing an item. If it's correct, they leave contented. If not, you'll gain some negative points, which also appear if you waste time exploring areas on the map that you shouldn't be. Despite this penalty, the game has a nice hint system you can use freely, which I needed on day 2, as I didn't key into what the game wanted from me while looking for a particular item. That happened with the shop itself too. A customer wanted an item made of stone that only weighed 1 kilogram. I found the scales sitting on the counter, but after accessing a couple of hints, I had no idea where the weights the hint was informing me of were hiding. I eventually worked out they were behind a cabinet door in plain sight, and that's been my biggest issue with the game so far, how hidden everything seems to be. It took me until day 3 before I discovered the map, and all the other compartments that could be opened on this Ouija board looking thing. I gather that's part of the fun, searching and prodding until you're sure of what you're looking for, but I found it frustrating, even though I was enjoying the atmosphere, and like piecing together the larger story of what's happening in the town through the conversation with those who entered the shop. I want to continue with Strange Antiquities. But while part of me feels like it'd be best played with a walkthrough to fully enjoy the atmosphere and storytelling without any errors on my behalf, part of what makes the game unique is in how many things are hidden from the player. The enjoyment of discovery on a deeper scale than just cataloging all the items on the shelves, which I also enjoyed. Like a few games in this video, playing this sequel has made me more excited to go back and play the first game in the series. So I guess I'll be finding time for a strange horticulture before I return to my role as an apprentice thaumaturge who's likely in over his head by the time the game concludes. As of writing this script, I've been playing Hades for a week. It's been on the to play list for far too long. And just like reviewing Citizen Sleeper 2 earlier in this video, the release of a sequel got me to go back and play the original. So hey, at least I'm finally getting around to some of these beloved titles. Hades 2 is definitely more Hades. You're playing Zagreus' sister Melanoi, and you're in the Crossroads instead of the Underworld, but the general game loop and style of combat is the same. Through context clues from this first hour, I think I know how Hades ends, so that'll be interesting when I finally get through it. A week of fighting my way through the underworld prepared me for the rhythms of combat here in the sequel. You have your standard base attack, special attack, magic attack, and dash. The gods will grant power-ups, and in the 3 attempts I had during my hour with the game, I found them more powerful and useful than in the first game. This one power-up made it so enemies explode and damage each other on death. What a game changer. Once vanquished, you'll return to base, get to talk to everyone, upgrade with materials acquired during your travels, give some gifts, and run off to do the whole thing again. I found the progression slower and more interesting than in Hades. There's more resources found with special unlock tools, and it takes a couple of goes to unlock a new weapon, so I had to get used to the starting weapon and what it could do. Variety is nice, but so is mastery, and I always wonder which path to walk down when playing this type of game. It's like deciding which new room to enter based on the reward it gives. I also find the production value in Hades 2 just as stellar as the first. The character art and voice acting is of the same high quality, though I found myself distracted by the character portraits having a sheen that would periodically pass over them. Honestly, all these years later, Hades 2 seems like nothing more than more Hades, and I think that's great. It has been a while since the first game released, so I think to not burn myself out, when Hades is finished, I might have to wait a few years to fully enjoy what the sequel has to offer. I have heard people dislike Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 mainly for being an action-adventure game, when the first was an ambitious CRPG. The original Bloodlines is one of those games I've always meant to play, but haven't gotten around to yet, so I'm evaluating Bloodlines 2 on its own merits. How does it stack up? Well, I like the premise. We wake up in a Seattle warehouse finding we share our consciousness with another vampire, who's a detective. Over the course of my hour, I found out some of who my character was, and what caused Detective Fabian to share a mind with me. We meet a rude and overzealous sheriff, and I was heading to meet the city's previous prince by the time I stopped playing. I'm intrigued by the storytelling and voice acting so far. It doesn't look too bad either, but of course, this is a game. So what of the gameplay? I've never been a fan of first-person melee combat. I just don't think it works well. Based on the clan we choose after the tutorial, we have different combat options, but at the start, it's a dash and an attack. There are vampire powers, such as telekinesis that can summon weapons, even out of the hands of enemies, but in all the fights I had with ghouls, I found myself overwhelmed and zipping around trying to deal damage where I could. At least once we whittle their health bar down, there's an option to feed, which restores any lost health. The other gameplay was following a vampiric scent over the streets of Seattle. We get to scale buildings, but we also have to be careful not to do anything otherworldly in front of humans, lest we break the Masquerade. Fabian mentions that since humanity all carry cameras with them that can upload to the internet, not standing out is more important than ever. I can see that if I was expecting a CRPG from this long-awaited sequel, and I found myself playing a linear action game with iffy combat, I'd be disappointed. I don't think it's that good a game, but I love the premise and presentation of the story enough that I want to see this tale through to the end. And it also makes me want to push the first game further on my list, so at least there's that. I'm showing my age here, but the goofiness of the satire in The Outer Worlds 2 made me fondly remember playing the Space Quest games when I was younger. Not only laughing out loud at more than a few lines, but how hilariously hostile the universe is and how the character you control feels blown about by the winds of Providence. Of course, The Outer Worlds 2 is a CRPG, so we get to shape the character we control, instead of playing a lowly space janitor, and we're a commander to boot. The opening hour is a mission going wrong. We get a taste of the tone, the side characters, and the mechanics at play. I chose to be straightforward with combat, firing my pistol and rifle at guards, while tossing grenades and aiming for explosive barrels. I could have been stealthy, but nah. The guns feel snappy enough, but even with the ability to slow down time, combat felt tepid. Like I was going through the motions instead of truly enjoying the engagement of gunfire. Luckily, the speech system and the potential for role-playing through locked-off options shines above everything else. I picked the background of my character to be a renegade play-by-their-own-rules type, and regardless of the options available, I defaulted to any dialogue choice aligning with that character trait, as well as the speech skill I took. One hilarious interaction was when I should have been comforting the rookie who finds themselves injured in an explosion. The game gave me the option to pickpocket the credits they had on them, which the ship's droid admonished me for after the mission was over. The failed mission also sets up some worthwhile stakes for the player character and the person who might be the game's antagonist. I think The Outer Worlds 2 does a good job at setting a light, silly yet satirical tone for its world and characters, as well as giving players the option to roleplay. Like Avowed released earlier this year, I can see myself having a fun time playing through The Outer Worlds 2, but perhaps not remembering it that fondly once I'm done with it. Another thought I had is that with Obsidian releasing both a fantasy and science fiction CRPG in 2025, it feels a bit like BioWare in the late 2000s. However, Mass Effect this is not, for good and ill. When talking about Demonschool earlier, I mentioned how there is a danger with a game having a planning phase with fight-specific goals, because I feel like every fight has an optimal way through it, and failing to work that out makes me feel bad. Forestrike takes this idea of planning and tactics and applies it to a side-scrolling beat-em-up. I can press the foresight trigger and play through the fight as many times as I want, but when I choose to play through the fight for real, I have to actually execute everything I've practiced beforehand, and therein lies the tension. This is a roguelite. You're a pupil of the Forestrike School of Martial Arts, sworn to protect the Empire, which is under attack by corrupt influences. Each fight will pay in gold, add new moves to your arsenal, or upgrade current moves. You reach a boss, and then it's off to the next area. Now, on my first few attempts of the first boss, I used Foresight to replay the fight over and over again, but I just couldn't see a way through, so I chose to fail and restart the run. This failure is cleverly explained away as the student using meditation to see how his fights to the capital city will play out, just as the Foresight power is using meditation to see how the fight will play out before it actually occurs. The tutorial teaches about key dodges, blocks, how weapons work, and the different attacks available. I encountered another master who I could start a run with, changing how the game plays and what upgrades I receive in subtle but impactful ways. The fights feel good because each hit is conveyed through strong animation and impact, despite the lo-fi art. Because it's a roguelite, and I'm in the middle of finally playing Hades, I could see the similarities to how that game is structured, with its 4 zones and choosing different rewards after each encounter. Despite being about martial arts spectacle and requiring a level of dexterity from the player, Forestrike is a slower game. I don't know if its push and pull combat mechanics can sustain the amount of time needed to make it to the end, but after an hour, I want to return, to pull off some sick-looking fight choreography as I try to save the Empire. Demonschool is weird in a good way. We have an over-enthusiastic main character in Faye, who, upon traveling to Hemp's Island to attend the titular Demonschool, forces friendship upon Namako, who really just wants to be left alone. The two find themselves fighting gangsters, and then, for your first school assignment, tracking down a cursed VHS tape that kills you within 3 days if you watch it. The within is very important. The design of Demonschool feels Persona-y, in that there is a town to explore, time moves forward during exploration and story beats, and the transitions from day to day have a lot of love put into them. The music is fantastic too. One little touch I like is how the NPCs you can talk to have speech bubbles above their heads that gray out once you hear what they have to say. They never say anything that important, but it adds to the fun vibe of the world. So far, the characters and interactions have been the highlight for me. And that's not to say the combat system isn't interesting or engaging. It's one of those tactics systems where you can plan out your turn a million different ways before committing actions and allowing the enemies to retaliate. Movement is always to the maximum square in any direction, and your party has a set amount of action points they share. The overall goal of combat is to use all the movement options available upon attacking to line enemies up, so a single ability can take out as many as possible. Each fight has a perfect rating goal of eliminating a certain number of enemies within a certain number of turns, before making your way to the opposite end of the playspace to engage the seal, ending the encounter. The final combat I took part in has creatures that slowly creep towards the player's end zone, and that fight, more than others, showcases my main issue with the combat as a whole. It feels like a puzzle that needs to be solved. With the goal stated for a perfect clear, I feel like every fight has an optimal way through it, and that I'm fumbling my way to the end the best I can creates a disconnect between the fun I'm having and the fun I feel I could be having. Hopefully, the more time spent with this system, the more its puzzle-solving aspect will make sense to me. And I do want to spend more time with Demonschool. The overarching mystery of what's going on at the school and the prophecy that Faye is here to hopefully stop from happening doesn't matter too much to me. I just want to spend more time in this world with these characters. Demonschool has a hangout vibe. If it wasn't about demons, gangsters, and corrupt police, I'd almost call it a cozy game, which tells me that tone and atmosphere always matters more than content. It's wild that a few days after I mention Outlaws in my Red Dead Redemption critique, a remaster comes out. I only played the demo back in the late 90s, but I remember it having well-animated cutscenes and being a competent shooter. Playing an hour of it for this video surprised me with how playable it is. I'm assuming the original game didn't have the ability to aim in 3 dimensions, and I don't know what other bells and whistles Night Dive added, but I had a lot of fun shooting bandits while exploring through each Wild West themed level. Look how cool this credit sequence is. The animation goes from being well staged and engrossing to small scenes of average quality. I'm guessing the story sections got the majority of the time and budget, while gunning down Bandit X at the end of a level was thrown together hastily. But yeah, these story sections are great. I remember playing games of that era and feeling like cutscenes were always a nice reward for finishing a level, but in Outlaws, the levels were the part I enjoyed the most. I kept my expectations in check as Outlaws is a shooter from 1997. I've heard this is the first FPS with a reloading mechanic, and even a few levels in, it was tough to get into a rhythm of reloading. Using the shotgun familiarized me with it, because I had to reload after every shot. But with the 6-shooter or rifle, there were far too many times I went to shoot an enemy and I heard the click 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 of an empty chamber. The level design is the standard find a key to access new parts of the level fare of the era, but I enjoyed the train, where going back with a key to open up doors in cars I'd already worked my way through rewarded me with goodies, as well as getting to jump on top of the boxcars. Again, it's not graphically impressive by today's standards, but I loved it all the same. And I felt a similar charm with the shootable windows in Level 2's town, or the odd winding cliffs of Level 4. Movement got a bit wonky at times on the train. I assumed the level moving had something to do with it. And I remember a lot of Doom-type games of the 90s simulating a jump by running over large gaps. I wasn't expecting to have to do that over this gap, but it somehow worked. Honestly, the only thing I didn't enjoy was hearing the same lines from the enemies over and over as I was exploring the levels, alongside the level being over the instant you kill the bandit leader. I think I'm going to have to play through the rest of Outlaws. As an early FPS, the story, gunplay, and especially the music holds up to a remarkable degree. I wanted to keep playing, just to see what Western staple the next level tried to replicate with the technology available. It feels like this is one of those rare remasters that did their best to preserve what made the original game special. And special is definitely how I describe Outlaws, even all these years later. You know, it's fitting that the final game I cover for 2025 is a remaster, because while looking over the games I ranked for this video, if I were to run down the top 10 as is, 4 of the 10 would go to ports, remakes, and remasters. I feel for a true best games of 2025 list, I need to include games that came out for the first time this year. So my compromise is to give these 4 games an honorable mention before we get to the top 10. These games are Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, The Outlaws Remaster, Metal Gear Solid Delta, and Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Where they would have ended up in the top 10, you'll never know. Actually, I'll probably post the entire ranking over on my Patreon. You should join. Of course, this isn't a true Best Games of the Year top 10 either. I only played all the games in this video for an hour. So it's more a list of the top games of 2025 that I want to get back to playing as soon as possible. If you want the best game I played in 2025, That would be Tunic. If you've played Tunic, you should go watch my critique of Tunic. If you haven't played Tunic, you should go play Tunic, and then watch my critique of Tunic. Tunic! Now that the silliness is out of my system, let me run you through my top 10 of 2025 as seriously as possible. Number 10. The Outer Worlds 2. I like the silly sci-fi tone of The Outer Worlds 2, and how building my character gave me unique choices in dialogue and interacting with the world while excluding others. I want to see if there's thematic weight underpinning the comedy of what is likely a lengthy adventure, but before that, I need to go back and play through the first game. Number 9. Caves of Cud. I like how, because of the ASCII art style, and the glut of keys on the keyboard to play the game with, figuring out how Caves of Cud plays, and what I can do within it, will be rewarding enough, let alone making my way through its world unscathed. Number 8. Wanderstop. A cozy game where a character suffering from burnout has to slow down and enjoy the process of making tea while running a tea shop. I'm looking forward to existing in this world and getting to know the customers, and to learn if Alta can take things easy by the end of it. Number 7. Forestrike. While its roguelite nature is a little off-putting, I love how the combat feels to execute in Forestrike. The lo-fi pixel animation creating a sense of impact, while the design allows me as many chances as I need to play through the scenario before trying it for real. Like most roguelites, I bet finally reaching the capital and defeating the villain will only be the first step in a wider world of systems and playstyles the game has to offer. Number 6. Demonschool. While the combat of Demonschool is unique, and also allows for planning before execution, it's the characters and the world that made their impression on me. I wonder what trouble, phase enthusiasm, and habit of acting before thinking is going to get her and Namiko into next. Number 5. South of Midnight. As a game, South of Midnight feels like a stock standard third-person action-adventure title, cycling between story moments, combat, light puzzle solving, and platforming, but with its stop-motion animated style and fairy tale vibe, I'm drawn to its world and the story told within it. I want to see if Hazel can succeed in rescuing her mother, and what twists and turns the game will throw at her next. Number 4. Hollow Knight Silksong. I think Silksong was worth the wait. Its presentation and control feel like the result of years of laser focus, crafting a singular gaming vision. I've played further than my 1 hour after writing the script for this video, and while I have thoughts on the game's difficulty and the wider discourse around it, that's not pertinent to the first hour, which makes me want to lose myself completely in a new Hollow Knight experience. Number 3. Hades 2. Hades 2 is more Hades, for good or ill. I'm closing in on 30 hours of Hades 1 while writing this, and after I've had my fill of that game, I look forward to waiting a while and then diving headfirst into the sequel to try it all again with new characters, new weapons, and new abilities. Number 2. Death Stranding 2. Another 2. I didn't love Death Stranding when I first played it last year, but it was such a unique and well-crafted experience, I still think of it fondly. Death Stranding 2 feels like an extension of that. I'm sure I'll have issues with this sequel, but in my hour with it, there was enough of what I loved in the first game to make me want to spend another 50 to 100 hours in this dangerous and desolate world. And number 1, drumroll please, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. An hour wasn't enough time to spend with Clair Obscur. The characters and world it introduces, as well as its dexterous turn-based combat, have kept me thinking about it for months. I've heard so much hyperbole about it not only being Game of the Year, but also Game of the Decade. that I simultaneously feel embarrassed putting such an obvious pick at number 1 on my list, alongside wanting to play through it as soon as possible to finally understand where everyone is coming from. High praise indeed. And that's my list. Man, what an amazing year 2025 was for video games. Let's go back over to the couch and I'll wrap up the video, as well as my thoughts on the year as a whole. And we reached the end of another yearly wrap-up. 38 games in all, and it was limited to games only released in 2025 and December 2024, instead of anything I happened to play from other years. I discovered idle/incremental games, and I think I've had my fill of the genre already. There were a couple Vampire Survivors clones I looked at as well. Plenty of games I've always wanted to play got sequels, so that gave me the push I needed to finally play the originals. And there was a nice mix of indie and AAA. I would have liked to sample a few more AAA games that caught my eye, but like I said in the intro, I refuse to play any game that uses the Nouveau, so I'll have to wait until they're on deep sale on the PS5, or they remove that awfulness from PC. I actually don't think 2025 was as bad for remasters and remakes as previous years. If I had to try and sum up the year, I'd say it was defined by long-awaited sequels. Some more long-awaited than others, Silksong, but Hades 2, Stranding 2, Outer Worlds 2, Bloodlines 2, Citizen Sleeper 2, and more Deltarune is nothing to sneeze at. And those were just the sequels I played for this video. Ignoring all the sequels with the Nouveau, I didn't even get to play Ghosts of the Otai. Too many games, y'all, especially for just one guy. And that brings me to the announcement that I'm not going to repeat this project for 2026. It's just too much work. While the end of 2025 and start of 2026 should have been time to unwind a little, I was scrambling to get this video done. I still want to sample what the new year has to offer, and I have some ideas on how to cover the games I play, but it won't be like this. I do plan to make a Best Games of the Year video around this time next year, so be on the lookout for that. Now, if you enjoyed the video and want to support my channel, you can press those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. If you'd like to help a little more, why not sign up for my Patreon? In the free tier, there's monthly updates, as well as my Monday Musings column the week after it comes out. Or if you want to throw a few dollars my way, you get early access to the videos and the new Monday Musings. I think it's a good deal, so why not give it a look? Finally, I'd love to know what you thought of the video down in the comments. What were your favorite games of 2025? And which games I covered are you eager to check out yourself? Until next video, I hope you're all doing well, are enjoying your gaming, and are having a wonderful day.